welcome to the Route Consultant Weekly Webinar. For those of you who are here for the first time, my name is Josh Gregory. I am one of our directors on the consulting team here. There's a lot of different things I do. You may see me in a couple different places if you start working with us. I've been with the firm for a few years now. For our regular attendees, welcome back. And for everyone who is new here, this is not going to be a super dry webinar where we're just talking at you the whole time. There's some content we'll go through, but then the majority of the time here is going to be a Q&A section at the end where we want you to ask anything you can think of around FedEx, the industry as a whole, and we'll try to answer it all for you today. So I will also be co-hosting with Bridget today, and she's one of our consultants here who helps guide buyers through their first acquisition. She's amazing. I'll bring her on a little bit later when we get into the Q&A. Now, before I get started, there is a quick disclaimer I have to read as I do every week. So Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation and FedEx Ground. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation or FedEx Ground. And all that means is that you're not going to hear any materially non-public information here today that's secret that we're pulling straight from FedEx. You're going to hear some helpful information, hopefully, from our experience so that you can help make a better decision as you're getting into this space. Now, before I get into the topic today, there's a couple quick events that I wanted to highlight. So if you are a current FedEx or Amazon contractor right now, we are doing a happy hour out in San Jose, California tonight. So if that's something that you're interested in, reach out to the team and we can get you connected because that is happening tonight. On Friday, for current contractors, we have a road show in San Diego as well. And then coming up next week on May 6th, there's another FedEx and Amazon happy hour out in Michigan. And then the last one is coming up at the end of May 20th. We have a road show out in Raleigh, North Carolina. And everyone who's attending is going to be getting a VIP tour of the new Morgan Olson plant out there. So if any of those are things you're interested in attending or just want to be a part of, reach out to the team. We can get you some more details. Now, for those of you who have never been on one of these webinars before, there is a key thing that you need to do as a participant. So you're bringing a lot of questions to us, but before you ask a question, we will need you to answer one of our questions. So the question of the day today is, as we are heading towards vacation season, if you had to choose between going on a cruise or an all-inclusive resort, which would you choose and why? And then a bonus is, where would you go for either of those two things? So as I'm going through this today, you can go ahead and load up the Q&A section of this webinar with your questions, but just make sure you're answering that question of cruise versus all-inclusive. And then just as a note, do not put your questions into the chat section of the webinar. We'll miss it. So put it in the actual Q&A section, and then we'll make sure we're answering that question for you. Okay, so jumping into the content for today, I want to spend some time talking about the due diligence process and how it can be really different for this industry versus some others you may have been looking at or evaluating. And so due diligence is an extremely important part of the process, no matter what kind of business you're looking at, because obviously it's really important to be able to correctly evaluate what it is you're actually buying. And this is not just true for new buyers looking into this industry for the first time. Some of you who are current contractors are going to look at expanding outside of your terminal or just adding a couple of zip codes in the terminal you're already working out of. And it is just really important to be able to properly identify that value so that you know you're paying the right price. And it can be really intimidating to understand the profitability of one of these businesses and try to get a true cash flow. So at minimum, I want to make sure that I'm helping you understand conceptually what you should be looking for. And it's really important to be aware of the documents you should request. And this isn't just for the buyer. It's also important as a seller, if you're thinking about listing your business, the things to know that are going to be important for the valuation so that you know you can already have that prepared to make that a little bit easier for you. And as a buyer, obviously, it's really important to know everything that you need to know to make a proper decision. But what I want to focus on today is the key difference here that I think you really need to understand about the due diligence process. And this is something that was really foreign to us when we entered the space. I'm sure you'll have heard Spencer, our CEO, talk about it. He came from a hedge fund background. So there was a lot of focus that he thought, and I think, and a lot of people think, needs to be on historical financials when you're evaluating a business. And that's true for a lot of industries, but it is pretty different for this industry. And this is something that we spend a lot of time talking to buyers, sellers, and lenders and banks to help them understand too. And that's just the idea that historical financials, so things like P&Ls, balance sheets, tax returns, are largely irrelevant to understanding a business's current value in the FedEx space. And I know that sounds crazy. How can you possibly evaluate a business without knowing the history and the historical financials? How can you get to a real value? So what I want you to hear most clearly from me today is that the most important data is understanding the business over the last 6 to 8 weeks. And that is the business that you are buying. It's not what happened to the business in 2020 or 2021. And I want to walk through a couple of examples and thoughts here about why we think that's so important and the best way to evaluate these. So right now, the time of year, if you're looking at businesses, a lot of them have not finalized their 2021 tax returns. A lot of people file for extensions, so you may not see a 2021 tax return for a little while if you're looking at a business right now. And so you may be, when you're going in and talking to a business, you may just be evaluating a 2020 tax return, which was a year and a half ago at this point, and it'll keep getting farther away. The chances are very high that the business you are looking at buying right now looks completely different than it did in 2020. It probably has a completely different set of drivers. It probably has a completely different set of trucks. There may be a new manager, or they may have added a manager or two. Your territory is going to be different. These territories fluctuate and change year over year, and most of them are growing and adding on zip codes, or at least adding on stops. And so that's going to look really different than it did 2 years ago. And that also means that your contract is going to look really different with FedEx. The way that FedEx is paying you right now is going to be different than it was 2 years ago. The terms and the rates are all going to be different. So I can show you an incredibly healthy business from 2 years ago. I can also show you a dumpster fire from 2 years ago, but that really doesn't do a lot to say or prove what that business is today. There's so many changes that can happen where the business can go up or down, that 2 years of time is nearly an infinite gap in terms of understanding what the business was and what it is. Now, the strongest argument that I can make, that I've heard made, and I think is justifiable, around why you should review historicals is that it does give you trending data. So you do get to see how that business has trended, how it's trended in certain categories over the years, but 90% of the valuation comes from recent data. And you should not base your financial expectations of cash flow on what the business did in those previous years. That's even more of a factor now when a lot of the businesses that are coming to market that you're seeing are carve-outs, which is when they are pieces of a larger business. And so in scenarios like that, the tax return is even less reflective of what the overall business is. So it is something that I'll give 10% of the thought process is around those trends, and it's worth seeing those, but the vast majority of the data and the basis of the valuation really does need to come from the recent data. So when I talk about recent data, a couple of things to focus on and focus on getting as part of the due diligence process: payroll. So who's driving the routes? How often are they driving? What are they getting paid on every day? What kind of pay rates are you seeing? And the really important thing, both for payroll and every category that we try to do, is look at, as a percentage of revenue, how much is payroll? And I think this is a key factor for a few of the categories I'm going to mention, but also for contractors as a whole. If you're trying to think about the best way to budget and structure your financials, there are certain percentage ranges we have seen to be the proper ranges to aim for in just about every category. And we can help you with that. We can talk you through that if you reach out to our team, at least from a conversation standpoint of what to aim for and how to get there. Because if you haven't taken the time to think through that, it's fair. I see lots of people who don't do a weekly budget, but it is something that will have a big benefit for your business. But from a due diligence standpoint, like I said, payroll is one of the most important. The next one is fuel, especially right now. Understanding what fuel is and has been recently versus what it was a year ago, it's going to be dramatically different. Fuel price is going to change. The mileage on your trucks may have changed. So it's important to see what you've paid in fuel over the past few weeks and take that into account when you're looking at the data. Then repair and maintenance is a key one. I regularly get the question from contractors why we don't just use the last year of repair and maintenance as a cost level for projections. If there haven't been any changes to the fleet in the year, then that cost is only going to increase in the future as that fleet just continues to age. It's also possible that the previous year had a really high cost because the seller made a lot of repairs. Maybe they added a new engine or a new transmission that's going to lead to a decrease in costs in the future. So it's more about understanding the fleet as it is, understanding the mileage and the territory as it is, and how that fleet is going to age over the next year, and then assigning a cost accordingly. It's also why I really strongly recommend that all buyers get a third-party mechanic to do a review before you purchase and make sure that you know what it is you're actually buying. So it's something I hear pushback on all the time where people didn't properly understand the fleet before they purchase. So I would really strongly encourage that you actually get an inspection. So like I said, those are kind of the key points. Also, settlement statements. We want to see recent revenue trends to understand how the routes have been fluctuating, how the revenue from FedEx has been fluctuating, and make sure we get a good sense of the data. And we say 6 to 8 weeks because that's enough to give you some sense of a little bit of the current variability. And then we can take an average from that and project it forwards. And that's going to give you a really conservative look at what the business is today. No growth, no changes. And that's what you can expect with what you're buying right now. Now, that is the thing that it's probably one of the hardest things to conceptualize when you're first finding this space. So it's why I wanted to take some extra time today to make sure that you understand why it's so important to prioritize recent data when you're evaluating a business, and why a tax return can be really tough to use as an actually validating piece of information. Because that's really the only way to get a clear picture of the business you're actually buying, not just a business from 2 years ago that doesn't exist anymore. Now, that all being said, you're probably still going to have to collect the tax returns in the due diligence process. You should still ask for it. It's our duty as a broker to get those for you, but any brokerage should be able to get those as well. And the reason I say you'll definitely need it is because if you're financing, no matter how many times we've talked to banks, they're still going to ask for that information. Banks will do as banks do, and they still need tax returns to validate financing. So it's something that you should collect and look at, but that should just never be the final purchasing decision. You should never make a decision based on that data alone for your cash flow, because it does not relate to the business you're actually buying. So that's it around due diligence and just the mindset that I wanted to make sure you guys internalize and understand. So before we get to the Q&A, I'm going to bring Bridget on to jump in and talk through the new inventory we've had come out this week, and then we'll get to the Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. All right. We had 9 new listings on our public site this past week, and we'll get started with one right here in Tennessee. This actually we carved into 2 portions. One is operating out of Knoxville and the other one is out of Kodak. So this first one out of Knoxville, Tennessee, this is a 10 P&D route operation, currently listed at a little over $500,000. It's around 41% of revenue. Currently operating around a 6% Ebitda margin. It does come with 3 managers, 5 spare trucks. And this business is going to come from a very tenured contractor with over 15 years of experience in the FedEx space. This will provide a remote ownership opportunity if any of you guys are looking for that, and is in an extremely high development area with a lot of growth potential there. The Kodak, Tennessee listing is 15 P&D routes. This is listed at $1.125 million, and this is going to be around 67% of revenue, currently operating around a 15 to 16% Ebitda margin. This one does come with 2 managers and 2 spare trucks. And again, from the same tenured contractor with a ton of experience. And again, another remote ownership opportunity and a lot of growth potential there as well. The next one is out of Norcross, Georgia. This is going to be an 8 P&D route operation. This is listed at $1.1 million, and that's going to be right around 99% of revenue. This is currently operating around a 20% Ebitda margin. This comes with one driving manager and 2 spare trucks. And this one in Georgia could be SBA eligible. So if you've been waiting on that, reach out, give that one a look. It's very dense routes and has a high percentage of residential stops, high package volume per route, and a low pickup count. Again, that was SBA eligible in Georgia, Norcross, Georgia. The next one is out of Salem, Oregon. This is 8 P&D routes listed at $600,000. And this is going to be right around 66% of revenue. This is currently operating around a 14.5% EBITDA margin. This business also comes from a really tenured contractor with over 21 years of experience in the FedEx space. There are spare drivers available for growth and contingency here. And it looks like they've done some improvements to their fleet here to help reduce on maintenance costs and better the efficiency as well. All right, the next one is out of South Bend, Indiana. This is going to be a little smaller. This is just a 4 P&D route operation, currently listed at $430,000. This is right at 80% of revenue, currently operating around a 16% EBITDA margin. It does come with 1 spare truck. Lot of volume here. It does have a spare driver available for growth and contingency if you wanted to try that. And being in South Bend, Indiana, it's going to provide you with a great mixture of dense and rural routes. All right, moving along. This one is next one is in Spartansburg, South Carolina. This is an 8 P&D route operation listed at $975,000. That's right around 99% of revenue. This is currently operating around a 28% EBITDA margin. So really impressive there. It does come with 1 manager, high development and growth potential in this service area to be considered. And it looks like they've done some improvements to their fleet as well to improve efficiency and cut on maintenance costs. And then for line haul, we have one, we have 2 line hauls this week. The first one is out of Dallas, Texas. And this is just 1 line haul run. It is listed at 1.353 million. And this is around 92% of revenue. This is currently operating around a 17% EBITDA margin. And it does come with 1 manager who oversees the majority of the operational weight of the business. So if you needed a little help there, that could be good. And this line haul run is a dedicated run, but it also has wild runs and spot runs that you could add in addition to that. So that dedicated run is going to offer you that guaranteed source of revenue. And then in addition to that, you have the spots and the wild runs. The next line haul is out of Arizona. This is 5 line haul runs, and this is currently listed at $2.1 million. And this is right around 107% of revenue. It does come with 1 manager, and it's consists of 3 dedicated solo runs, 1 unassigned solo run, and then 1 wild solo run. This business comes again from another tenured contractor. This contractor has over 14 years of experience in the FedEx space. And this sale includes a devoted driving manager with over 9 years in this business. So really valuable team members there. And then we have an Amazon listing this week. This one is out of San Diego, California. This is 45 DSP routes. Currently listed at 4.85 million, right around 80% of revenue, currently operating around a 28% EBITDA margin. This comes with 4 managers. This is a residential service area near the station with a high package count. The current owner is frequently asked to be a speaker for Amazon and potential new DSPs. It's a very efficient operation with multiple managers in place to run the day-to-day operation. They are clean. They have clean, consistent financial records with very strong margins. Obviously, you all have seen that so far. And Amazon provides a full service lease program to reduce that variable vehicle cost there too. So really cool stuff coming out for Amazon in that California area. And that is it for our brokerage this week, Josh. Now I got to know. I'm going to ask you first. I don't have my answer yet, but are you, would you rather take a cruise or stay at an all-inclusive, and where? You probably know.
Yeah, so this is a tough one, if only because I've never actually been on a cruise. So while I want to go on one, I don't have enough experience to say which one I prefer. So historically, all-inclusive, since that's what I've always chosen. All-inclusives, I think I'd probably just go to somewhere like Jamaica or Mexico, maybe the Bahamas, if I had to choose. But if I did go cruise, I'd probably aim at something like a Mediterranean cruise, somewhere where I can make a couple stops that might be a little more fun than just on the beach every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that. I really could go either way here too. I actually have never been at either. I've never been on a cruise. I've never been on an all-inclusive.
Right.
Yeah, I've traveled with some particular individuals who think the all-inclusive experience really constricts, the adventure of a trip. So
yeah, that's fair. I think it's a question of if you want to do nothing all day and have everything brought to you, or at least a cruise. If you're doing nothing, the ship is taking you somewhere, so you might have some opportunities to go. Yeah,
that is true. But I will say two cruise adventures that I've really been interested in, that I've heard of from other friends, have been one all around Greece. And I've just always wanted to go to Santorini and, throughout Greece. So I think that would be really beautiful. And then to Alaska. I think those Alaskan cruises are gorgeous, but I don't know how I would like staying in a boat. And I've seen pictures of how tiny their little living quarters are. So I don't really know. But yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, the Q&A.
All right, let's jump into it and see what our Q&A people have to say about cruises versus all-inclusive. All right, it looks like we have a mix of both so far. All right, we'll get started with Rochelle. Rochelle says both. Said we are cruising to Alaska and also doing an all-inclusive on Grand Cayman. So I want that that combo. Okay, and Rochelle's question is, she said a fellow contractor thinks he saw something about FedEx requiring us to use specific payroll processing vendors. Have we heard anything about that, Josh? I know I haven't personally.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about a specific payroll processing vendor. That's something historically they haven't, like, there are some technologies and things that FedEx will do a list of approved vendors. Payroll processing hasn't historically been one of those. So I haven't seen any announcement there. It could be that there were some kind of payroll standards that the contractor saw or saw mentioned at the terminal, but I've not heard any formal announcement on a vendor list there.
Gotcha. All right, this next one is from Felicia. Okay, Felicia says, always a cruise, Cayman Islands again.
Nice.
And she wants to know, in preparation for a FedEx senior management interview, if you are only interested in P&D, should you prepare any content about line haul? Do we ever see any kind of like crossover there?
No, the only times you would want to is if you had an interest in both. And let's say you were interviewing for a P&D operation, you had interest in line haul, they're still not going to come with questions about line haul, but it could be an opportunity for you to ask if there are any line haul opportunities there, if that's something you're thinking about in the future. But those are typically segregated, where there will be a senior manager who always does the interviews, both P&D and line haul, but there's usually a P&D manager and a line haul manager that are separate, and whatever type of interview you're doing, that person will be in the room as well. So typically the questions are targeted specifically to the side you're doing, so you wouldn't need to know anything about line haul.
Okay, awesome. This next one is from Ferris. Ferris says, I didn't try cruises before, so I prefer all-inclusive vacations. Fair.
Yeah.
He has a few questions, mostly related to line haul here. The first one, though, I guess could go either way. He wants to know, are the listing prices fixed or negotiable? And I think that would just vary deal to deal, right?
There are some sellers who are willing to negotiate, some who the price is firm and they don't want to move on. Like that's something that's hard to give a concrete answer on. And it's something where, you can approach any negotiation the way you want to. And it may lead to you getting some change in price. It may not. Sometimes there are situations where there are multiple bidders and the price ends up going above the listing price. So it just depends on a function of what the territory looks like and what the seller's like. So there's not going to be, the answer is it depends.
Another one, he just wants a clarification on runs versus routes. I think we use them interchangeably. So just a quick clarifier there.
Yeah, runs are for line haul, routes are for P&D operations. Historically, there were some times that runs were called routes, but those should be two different things. You should never hear a P&D route called a run and vice versa.
All right. Okay, so he wants to know, what is a dedicated solo shuttle run? Have we heard about a shuttle run?
Yeah, I believe he's talking about a spot. It depends on if you're seeing shuttle as an official designation from FedEx, or if the seller's referring it to it that way. And line haul, there's a lot of language that's changed over the years, and people refer to certain things in certain ways that it's not technically called anymore. A spot run, if that is what you're referring to, is basically there are short distant deliveries that are done to businesses where it wouldn't make sense for a P&D contractor to make that delivery because it's so many packages that it would take multiple P&D trucks. So they'll have a line haul tractor take that load. And those are typically called spots because they're such short mileage. They're paid at a little bit different rate. And usually those spots are kind of almost like, they're not always on the contract. So an assigned spot would be one that actually is on the contract. It is actually a part that you would get no matter what, instead of just kind of maintaining what you've always done. Because typically, if they're not on the contract, spots are just kind of something that the same contractor gets to do, but it won't be on their contract officially.
Okay. And just a reminder for the Q&A, pop that answer in. Crews are all inclusive before you type your question so that I will answer it. Okay, and last one from Ferris. He wants to know, on average, what are we seeing for Ebitda in line haul? How much can you expect as a line haul contractor?
Yeah, so Ebitda varies a lot in line haul because one of the biggest drivers is if you have team or solo runs, and then just kind of the mileage that comes out of the business. So for those who don't know, team runs are when there's two drivers in the truck. Solos have one. The team runs can go a lot farther because the drivers can alternate and keep the truck on the road. So the team, one of the easiest ways to just look at revenue for line hauls is to just look at a per mile basis. So teams are always just going to do more mileage than solos. I see everywhere between 15 to 20% on the solo side, up all the way to 40% or higher sometimes on team runs, just depending on how you've structured the business. In terms of actual take home after that, that's Ebitda. So that's the number you have to work with before anything like taxes at the end of the year, anything you pay yourself, any CapEx you set aside to reinvest back in the business. So true take home is going to vary depending on your ownership structure.
Okay. Next one is from Alan. Okay, so I think Alan did not put an answer for the question here, but they said vacation. I'm probably an all-inclusive vacation is what I'm assuming for Alan. That's what we're going to assume, and probably in Florida, because he really loves Florida. I'm kidding, Alan. If you really have an answer to this question, you can pop it in. But he wants to know, what questions do you ask your CPA? So especially when it comes to like tax returns and analyzing these businesses. I know we talk a lot about the 6 weeks of data and all of that, but when you have a CPA or a bank, what are they looking for?
Yeah, especially if it's the CPA who's never seen a FedEx tax return, he's going to be really set back, because these are almost always, close to zero or negative if you have a good accountant running this right. Yeah. So if you come in and you see a really high negative number on a tax return as a CPA, you've probably got a lot of questions. just know that this is a pretty tax advantaged business. So a lot of times things like depreciation and certain line items you'll run through the business will take your tax return negative. So one of the key things both your CPA and a bank will want to know if they really are trying to use the tax returns is try to get as concrete of a list of add backs as they can get from the seller, in terms of just the things that were run through the business that would not be expenses you would have to inherit as a buyer. So a bunch of different things. The biggest ones are usually depreciation and amortization. Owner expenses would come out. And then there's several smaller line items, and they can all, I've seen accountants label them 100 different things on these tax returns. So usually to get really concrete answers, the seller might know, but oftentimes it comes from the seller's CPA. So if they've never seen a tax return, they might have more questions than are valid. But really all you're trying to do from a tax returns perspective is to try to get to what the real NOI was that guy took at the end of the year.
Okay, we have a lot of like really good answers, but they didn't have questions. So I just want to read some of these. Cruise, a Mediterranean cruise, a Jamaican resort, all-inclusive St. Bart's. Yeah, I could go there for sure. These are giving me lots of good ideas. I'm gonna take a list home to my husband and tell him to choose from one of these for our next trip. Okay, but back to your questions. We'll go with Yvette here. She says she would also stay in an all-inclusive, no doubt. But she wants to know if you, Josh, can expound on the Schedule L. We haven't had a ton of questions on it, but if you just want to give a little base knowledge about what it is, when it rolled out, and help us out here.
Yeah, so I can give an overview for people and just know that if you're a contractor in the space, there are some more detailed conversations FedEx is having at a terminal basis, but there's also still some things they haven't fully rolled out. But essentially what's happening here is that FedEx, if you aren't aware, as a contractor, you operate under the FedEx DOT number. And so traditionally they have covered all of our liability insurance in the event of an accident. So when we get into a crash, all you're responsible for are damages to the truck, workers' comp, any damages or any injuries for your driver, and then all external liability is handled by FedEx. And then there's sometimes a deductible you have to pay as well if it's a non-preventable accident or preventable accident. So what has happened over the past couple of years is that FedEx is experiencing significant expenses around these accidents, and it was projected to get over $1 billion this year. It's one of their highest expense items, and it's one of the biggest things they're looking at right now. And so as part of it, they have created and released a new Schedule L, a schedule that's attached to the FedEx contract that is expanding and changing some things around how incentives are paid out and how penalties are paid out with accidents. So what's going to happen now is basically FedEx is going to look over the last 12 months at your history around accidents and put you in a tier ranking 1 through 10 based on those accidents and safety scores around that. And the lower tiers are going to have to start paying a percentage of their revenue to cover all of the accidents is essentially how they're phrasing it. So there's a small percentage of revenue that will come out and be paid to FedEx to kind of account for the fact that you are causing more accidents. Whereas they're also saying if you were in the top tiers, 9 and 10, they will pay a safety incentive where you are safe enough and causing so few accidents that we will pay you a little bit of extra revenue. So that's the kind of the main change coming. I believe the rollout is maybe October, or I don't know the exact date, but it's something that's coming out over the course of this year, and it is a big change. And so that is the new change to Schedule L.
Okay, awesome. This next one is from Carrie. Let's see. Carrie's was the Jamaican resort. Yes. All right, let's see. Okay, are there more potential for remote opportunities for these businesses, or just a select few? What do we see? Because sometimes we do advertise like, hey, remote opportunity, but realistically, is it pretty rare to have that kind of opportunity in this space?
Yeah, what I would say is that it depends on what you're defining as remote. Remote could be that you are 2 hours away, could be that you're 10 hours away. In general, I'd say if you are aiming at being within 3 to 5 hours of the business, and then it's not something I would truly consider remote, you can get there. But there's a decent number of opportunities. You will see both P&D and line haul that can be run at least 3 to 5 hours away. The ones that are truly remote across the country where you never intend to be at the terminal are rarer. What I would say there is that on the P&D side, what you're looking for is either a current owner who is operating remotely. That's when we're advertising remote opportunity, it's usually because the current owner is already running it that way. Because that does two things. One, it means you know that the management structure that's in place is able to run this remotely. And two, you know that the terminal is comfortable with us, with a seller operating or with a contractor operating remotely. And usually those are the two things on the P&D side that are the most important to kind of go through and figure out if you are going to operate at a farther distance. Is do you have a management and team that can operate without you there frequently? And is the terminal going to be okay with it? Because even there's plenty of territories that you can operate remotely and won't have any problem running, but the terminal manager just has a preference where if he doesn't see the owner once a week, then he's going to be upset. So those are the things to just kind of be aware of. I'll say as well that on the line haul side, I more frequently see contractors able to operate remotely. And so there's more of those than there are on the P&D side.
Yeah. All right. We have a few here from Chris, and he kind of sent them all over the place. It was like an Easter egg hunt for me, but I found his answer to the question.
Okay.
So Chris says he prefers a cruise and a Mediterranean one or a Greek Isles, just because there are so many options. So that's on my list, Chris. He also had a comment too. I think my issue with staying in the tiny rooms. He said you're rarely in the stateroom, so size isn't really an issue there. So I think that's probably true. You don't go on a cruise to just stay in your room.
Yeah, fair. Luxury cruise. Yeah.
Chris wants to know first, do contractors generally offer benefits to their drivers?
Yes, it's going to vary widely what is actually offered. I regularly see some kind of PTO or vacation day as a part of it. I'll see sometimes some kind of bonus, maybe something around safety that sellers offer. Health insurance happens. It happens frequently in line haul. It's a little bit rarer on the P&D side, but I do see it. And from time to time, I also will see like 401k or some kind of benefit to that nature. But on the whole, you're seeing more benefits on the line haul side than you do on the P&D side. And there's no requirement for benefits from FedEx. So that's why it does vary so much, because it's whatever the current contractors put in place that they felt are both fair and attractive to new employees. And you're welcome to change those when you come on and add whatever you want.
Okay. Another one from Chris here. He wants to know, historically, looking back 36 months, what have you all seen in terms of multiples of Ebitda or revenue when selling these businesses?
So for us, we've seen multiples continue to increase, and I don't think the multiples are going to change anytime soon. There are periods of time where the Ebitda margins could be higher or lower, and that can affect purchase price. But typically, the margins are at least staying the same, if not increasing year over year, especially the last 36 months. So I would say that is still on the upswing in terms of multiples. Still, people expecting this business to continue to grow. As a percentage of revenue, it's just that we don't really value as a percentage of revenue, but we have seen that increase as well as the multiples do.
All right. Again, from Chris here, he wants to know what are average how many days on the market for these businesses? Do we see maybe for line haul and for P&D? Do we have an average?
I don't think we have an average number right now. It just varies so widely, especially if you're doing line haul and P&D. There's some that will get the first day it goes live, it'll have an accepted offer, and there's some that'll take a little bit longer. It's just a function of how the price and multiple compare, how the territories compare. So all number of reasons why something might last longer. I don't think we have a good average across all the listings, unless you know one, Bridget.
No, I was just going to say also, how much is available in the market too. If there's a ton available, obviously some's probably going to sit for a while if it's not priced as nicely as some of the other ones. But I think right now, we have a ton of inventory. So there might be some that sit a little bit longer, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem. There's just a surplus of inventory. So lots of good options to get in right now, I think at a fair and even low price for a lot of these businesses. And the last one from Chris here, he wants to know how we feel about acquiring a business with a leased fleet versus an owned fleet.
It's going to vary significantly if we're talking P&D or line haul. Line haul, completely fine. Most of the time I do see that being the better strategy on the line haul side is to have a leased fleet. The only caveat to be aware of is depending on who the lease is through, they aren't always transferable to a new buyer. So while a leased fleet can be great, it's not super valuable if the fleet can't transfer to you. So that's just something I would ask about in your due diligence if you do see a fully leased fleet, especially on the line haul side more than anything. On the P&D side, leases can be good, but leases mean a ton of different things on the P&D side. Sometimes people will say it's a lease and it's really just a financed vehicle. Sometimes it'll be a lease with no repair and maintenance. Sometimes it'll be a completely covered repair and maintenance lease. Hello Truck lease is the one we use, and that one covers repair and maintenance completely. We do recommend those. I typically don't recommend a standard lease for the P&D side. So if it was a lease that did not come with repair and maintenance included, I would probably ask for the seller to pay off the lease at closing and get the fleet free and clear if that's an option. But most of the time, trucks are not leased in the P&D space right now.
Okay, and I did find one more from Chris. I knew there was one. He wants to know, will that tier ranking be carried over from a business that we might purchase, or will it begin with the new contractor?
It should begin with a new contractor, but I don't know for sure. It's a little bit of a gray area right now.
Okay, awesome. All right, next one is from Alan. Alan says that he would do an all-inclusive, that he really dislikes cruises. And he said just anywhere on a nice beach. So it's very simple.
That works.
Yeah. He said he noticed that our listings show net operating income. Do we mean this to be the same as the Ebitda?
Yes. Yeah. NOI for us is the same as Ebitda. Anytime you see that, we are referring to Ebitda.
All right. We have another one from Phileas. She says, always a cruise, Cayman Islands, no change there. Sounds like I'm going to have to go. She wants to know if you're a future DSP, can you attend route consultant contractor events, same as the opportunity given to FedEx ISPs waiting to close?
Most likely. It depends on how far you are in the process. Reach out to the team and just kind of let us know where you are. And we have events specifically for Amazon and FedEx contractors, ones that are just for Amazon. So if it's one that we mentioned, Amazon contractors are welcome. That's the only contractor you are right now. I'd stay at one of those, but just reach out to the team, send us an email, Bridget or I, or anyone you have a contact info of at the terminal or at Route Consultant, and just lay out kind of what the timeline is for you and ask if you can attend, and it should be completely fine for you to join. But I don't want to 100% say until we get a little more context.
Yeah. All right, this next one is from Mark. Mark says, cruise all the way, baby. Big fan of the cruise. He wants to know, let's see. My question is list out who does, so who does the recruiting in a typical P&D business, and what are the usual sources for hiring?
Yeah, so most of the time I see it be the owner. Sometimes there is an internal recruiter. Sometimes there's a manager who's good at recruiting, but typically I'll see the owner kind of be the one who handles posting the ads and bringing the people in and qualifying them. And sometimes a manager will do the actual interviewing if you'd like, but a lot of times I do see owners try to own this if they don't have, like an internal recruiter or some kind of admin person to help with that. In terms of where to do it and how, there's a ton of different ways. People use Indeed, Craigslist, Facebook, word of mouth is fantastic. There are some vendors who can help with you recruiting on the P&D side. GoToro, Bright Flag. There's different people you can partner with outside of just doing it all on your own. I see a lot of people do kind of a few different strategies. to try to bring in and make sure they have a constant pipeline.
Yeah. Okay. Mark, oh, he did have a follow-up that I'll throw in here too.
Okay.
He said, what is the likelihood if the business I'm purchasing is slightly overscale, like 1%, how likely will the district be to approve the overscale exemption?
It's hard to say. They should. A lot of times I see them do it, but it can be a function of two things: how the terminal manager, like what his personality is, what if he's willing to kind of go out on a limb, and also how you interview. If they feel really comfortable with you, they're more likely to make an exemption than if they were on the fence on you already, and then they also have to make an exemption. So it's something that you should know once you interview, that you should get a really firm answer really shortly after that, because they're not going to approve you to move forward if you're over scale. So I would just say that might be the point in time that you find out for sure. But it's kind of a toss up to know one way or the other. You can't really guarantee it unless you've gotten something in writing from the terminal manager in advance already that they're open to it.
All right. This one's from Kevin. Kevin says an all-inclusive in Costa Rica.
Right.
That would be fun. He wants to know if the financing is already in place, what is the typical due diligence after the APA is signed, the due diligence time frame, I guess.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if the question's also like, what other things are you trying to secure or get information on at that point? Because with financing secured, it means the bank has what they need if you're using a bank. With contract signed, so you've kind of agreed to terms. So at that point, one of the main things that'll happen after that point is you should do a vehicle inspection, and there should be any kind of contingency in place in the contract to cover you in case the vehicles are radically different than represented. You'll probably want to continue collecting things like settlement statements leading up to closing, just to make sure you have a good sense of the business. It's really rare that you actually meet managers or drivers until usually almost the day before or the day of closing, because you just don't want to tell an entire staff that everything's going to change and it's going to happen in 2 months. So just wait for that. You just don't want them to have a bunch of time to think about it. So typically what we recommend there is waiting until really close to closing to actually meet those people. Outside of that, you should try to accomplish a lot of your due diligence before you actually sign the APA. So, if the financing is secured, it means you've done a lot of due diligence already for the bank to approve it, or whoever is funding it to approve it. So I would try to have everything done by the time you sign the contract.
Yeah. And then just a follow-up from Kevin here. He wants to know, are there any fuel hedging opportunities for P&D and line haul owner operators?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that are already built in around a fuel hedge built into the contract, both line haul and P&D, where there is a fuel surcharge built into the contract that's indexed against the price of diesel fuel. And as the price of fuel goes up and down over the week, the amount you're paid for fuel goes up and down. And it'll go up relative. It's not going to, if fuel goes up 10 cents, your fuel surcharge won't go up 10 cents. So it's not going to cover it wholly, but it does try to cover a similar percentage. So it is a hedge as prices rise, and it's designed to help you there. There's different things on the P&D side that you could do around your contract and moving money from one column to another to kind of hedge and think about the price of fuel, but I don't want to get into all of the specifics and details there. I'd say the normal is just the thing that's already built into the contract around the fuel surcharge and the hedge.
Gotcha. All right, this next one is from Christopher. It's another multi-part question, Josh, but Christopher said he is a fan of an all-inclusive in St. Bart's.
Okay.
Okay, Christopher wants to know if you can provide an example of the Ebitda calculation for FedEx, for the FedEx contract. So adding net income, truck depreciation. I know you cannot go through every single line detail, but like maybe just a couple bullet points of what you would consider, throwing in there to help calculate it. And I think we probably have content on our website that goes through this too, Josh, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so if you've ever seen our 101 course on our website, we do have a free training that'll run through kind of how to read a FedEx P&L, but just in general, the things that we're looking at, the major cost categories. So you've got revenue in the top line, which comes straight from FedEx. You've got your salaries and wages. You've got fuel, plates and renewals of plates, payroll taxes, your workers' comp insurance, your physical damages insurance, technology costs from things. There's a couple of different things you'll have on your vehicles that have an ongoing cost. And then there's, you might have some accounting and legal or office supplies or travel costs that are small line items. And then equipment maintenance and rentals is the last large line item you'll see. And so what that gets you is a net operating income. That's an Ebitda calculation. And that is an amount you'll have to work with, but then that does not include depreciation, taxes, anything from debt service, and anything that you want to set aside to either pay yourself or spend on CapEx or save and invest back into the business. So all of those numbers are personal choice. It just depends on how leveraged you are, what kind of taxes or how your CPA is structuring your tax return, how much depreciation you have, how much you're paying in taxes. All of those are going to go into how much you have to work with there and how those costs move around. So we do net operating income because those are all based on objective numbers, and then anything else after that is just a business decision on how you want to structure your business.
All right. Christopher also wants to know how many BC salaries are included in expenses for a typical 12 truck FedEx operation.
Standard operation at 12 routes is probably just going to have one BC. They might have a second one or a lead driver who kind of acts as an assistant manager on the weekends. It's rare to see more than that, though. There are some businesses that have more managers. They like to have over-index there, but any listing should call out how many managers they have, and so that should all be factored in. But I'd say 12 route is about one manager, maybe 1.5.
All right. We'll get to a question from Greg here. Greg prefers a Mediterranean cruise. And Greg wants to know really about DOT numbers. So obviously for FedEx, they supply their own DOT number for all of the contractors, but Amazon is different. So you need to supply your own DOT number, and he wants to know, is that really expensive as an Amazon DSP to consider?
It is an expense to consider. You do have to have your own DOT on the Amazon side. I'm not sure of the exact cost, but it is definitely something that is part of the business acquisition on the Amazon side. You do not operate under Amazon's DOT, and that is a nice perk of the FedEx system where you do operate under the FedEx's DOT.
All right. The next one is from Patrick. Patrick did not give an answer to our daily question. Patrick, I'm going to call you out here. But so we're going to make up an answer for you. Patrick cannot wait to go to an all-inclusive in the Maldives. So Patrick's question is, he said, well, really is getting drivers to show up to work the most difficult part in line haul?
I would say getting them to show up is not the hardest part. The hardest part is recruiting them to actually bring them into your company. Usually it's a lot easier to have to get the line haul drivers once they're recruited to actually show up and work. They're getting paid well. It's a career. It's a little bit different on the P&D side. That can be really difficult sometimes to make sure that all of your drivers actually come in, and you have to handle a lot more call outs. On line haul, that's usually not the issue. It's usually getting the employees at all so that you have them as part of your organization. And recruiting is a real challenge in line haul because more than just having the employees to run your business, if you want to grow in line haul, it's really just a function of how many resources can you acquire for your business. If you can get additional drivers and additional trucks, you can often find more volume. But the real limit is how successful you can be at recruiting.
All right. This next one is from Alan. Alan says, I prefer an all-inclusive resort. Alan also wants to know, is owner compensation usually added to the Ebitda, or additive to the Ebitda margin as an add back?
Yeah, usually it is an add back. We don't include any owner's compensation in Ebitda. Like, we don't call it out. You'll see it on tax returns and P&Ls, but that's not a cost we factor in, because you can choose to pay yourself as little or as much as you want, depending on if you want more of a cash flow or if you want to save more of the money to invest back in the business or make future purchases.
Right. Okay. This one is a follow-up from Chris. I think we already had Chris's answer.
Okay.
But Chris wants to know kind of like average rates that we're seeing in the market right now from lenders. I don't know if you can spit out a number exactly, but
yeah. So the interesting thing is that we're seeing rates go up. Conventional lenders are usually somewhere still around 4 to 5%. And that is usually a 5 to sometimes a 7-year loan, but usually 5 years. So while the interest rates are a little bit lower, the costs are going to be higher just because it's built over a shorter period of time. SBA is 10 years, and it is often as high as 7 or 8%, sometimes even higher. And so those are going to be the rates you're going to pay for a 10-year loan. SBA will also typically require a lower down payment. You can go as low as 10%, whereas conventional is going to take at least 20, sometimes 25% down payment.
All right. We'll get to a question here from John. John says, an all-inclusive that involves sand and water is the way to go. I like it. You got the basic, the basic needs there. A drink in hand, and I'm set.
Yeah.
All right. He wants to know, what do you have for presenting yourself and your RFI package to the manager? What items do you need to include in this initial package? I'm not sure, like maybe if you're getting ready for an interview and you want to know what you need to bring with you here, or maybe need some help with your RFI, but we can definitely answer both of those.
Yeah. So one thing I'll say is, if you do need any help, we have resources where we can help you on the RFI side of things. But as you're going in and doing the interview, you're typically going to need the RFI, which for people who don't know is the request for vendor information. It's essentially a business plan that you're presenting to FedEx. So you'll need that. You'll need an entity, and that needs to be either an S Corp or a C Corp. And you need to have your articles of incorporation. There's a few other little documents, but those are the main things that you will need for the interview, and those need to be sent in advance to schedule the interview. And like I said, if you need any help or guidance on the RFI side of things, reach out to our team. We can help you there.
All right, we are wrapping up this webinar, but we have just a few more questions we'll try to get to, but we're about to hit that cap. But I know we have a repeat here from Alan. He has a second question. This is kind of an odd situation, but he says, I've seen some listings for line haul operators selling routes, but still operating them. So you have to buy the trucks and then share the profits. What do you think about this? He said, I wonder why they wouldn't just finance their expansion instead of sharing profits.
Yeah, it could be any number of reasons. It could be a seller who wants help, and like maybe they've reached a size where they're not comfortable. They don't feel like they have the business know-how to continue to run it at this size. They want to bring somebody in who can help them run it, where they don't want to get out completely. They still love the space, but feel like they need to add knowledge and skills from someone else to bring into the organization. And that can work. That could be a good way to get into the line haul space. The things that are going to be really important, obviously, because you're kind of entering into a business partnership, is making sure that you have that partnership structure and that equity structure set up in a way that protects you, because this is somebody you've never worked with before. So there's going to be a lot of things that you'll be talking to your lawyer about to make sure that's all set up properly if you did decide to go that path. I would be also thinking about, if there came a point in time that you wanted to exit or make a new purchase, how that partnership would continue. Because one of the hardest things about getting into line haul is that first step. So this could be an easier way to do it. But is this a permanent partnership where if you made another acquisition that it would need to be with him? Like there's a lot of things to think about that can complicate things, but the first step into line haul would be easier that way. I would say that it's just going to be a factor of kind of getting a better understanding of why that's the structure they're pursuing and seeing if that's something you feel comfortable with.
Awesome. All right. We have one from Rod. Oh, I thought I was going to get to make up another answer, but he included it at the end here. Rod prefers an Alaskan cruise. And he wants to know what the average down payment held in escrow is normally for a purchase. What are we seeing there?
Yeah, so a couple different things that you could be saying here. If this is like an initial deposit, so most brokers will have basically an amount that once you have made an offer and gone under contract, there's an amount that is held in escrow until the end of the deal. Typically, that's about 10% of the purchase price. And then if we're talking true down payment for a bank, SBA could be as low as 10%. Conventional is going to be 20 to 25%. A caveat or something I would say there is that sometimes if there's seller financing in the deal, the banks will also consider that as a down payment amount, which can get you up to the number needed for the down payment.
Awesome. All right. This last one is coming in from Matthew, who is also interested in an Alaskan cruise. And I'll say Sean was another Alaskan cruise, hands down. So it sounds like we have some good experience there.
Yeah.
Solidifies my desire. Okay, so Matthew wants to know, are the new requirements for hiring and training drivers going to make it difficult to staff up in a pinch or during peak? Great question.
Yeah, what I'll tell you is that from personal experience, we did get to we were a step ahead. We got to demo this this new qualification process last peak season. So it is a little bit challenging. The hardest thing will be is if you wait until peak season to figure out how to do this program and then try to do that at the same time as you're trying to staff up quickly. If you can have the right trainers in place and you can start to plan ahead and you may have to bring in hires a little bit sooner for peak season. But it is something that if you wait until the last minute to figure out your plan for the new training program and for peak season, then it's going to be really complicated. I know because that kind of happened to us because it was new for us. And so we had to figure it out, but it's doable. And I think the system as a whole is better. It's just, if you can get what I would tell you to do as soon as possible is to get over the curve of switching to the new model and getting your trainer set up so that you'll have your trainer who can do all the programs. And then from there, get ready for peak season earlier if you can.
Awesome. All right. Looks like we have one more that slipped in here, and I'll go ahead and make you answer it, Josh. I know we're over, but this will be the last one. Okay, so let's see. How do we submit our bids? Okay. This is kind of lengthy, but the answer for their question is an all-inclusive resort. And this is coming from an anonymous person too. So I'll just read what they have here. Maybe not so much related question, but we are an established trucking company with 3 trucks and 6 drivers, and worked with different brokers to do their line haul contract routes, brokers or carriers, instead of purchasing line haul routes. How can we submit our bids on available routes directly to FedEx? Do we know?
2 things here. Yeah. So if you're saying bids as in the formal system that's a part of line haul where you bid to secure additional runs, you can't bid until you're actually a part of the FedEx system, where you won't be generating points that you can use to bid until you're already in the FedEx system. If you're trying to come into the system for the first time and not doing it via purchasing, there is a site called Build-A-Ground Biz where FedEx will post free runs at certain terminals. And those are going to be runs that do not come with trucks or drivers. So buildagroundbiz.com is where I would go if I were you to look for something like that. It's not usually a recommendation for somebody getting into the space for the first time because it's really difficult. But if you're already established, you have trucks and drivers, that's where I would go to look for those kinds of postings.
Awesome. All right. Well, that does it. And Josh, thank you for staying 4 minutes longer than we thought. Thank you, everybody, for submitting your questions and answers. It's always a pleasure to be here with you and to learn from Josh. But that wraps it up today. Josh, you want to?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for coming. So I'll see you guys all next week. And thanks for coming to the webinar this week.
All right.